Hello everybody. I'm grateful to everyone attending today's session to kick off our 24-25 season. My name is Avella Spiritu, and I'm with Red 5 Lean Performance, and I will be your host today. Before we kick off the presentation, let's cover off a few housekeeping notes. Please keep your microphones muted during the session for the best sound quality. And don't forget to unmute yourself when we open the floor for questions later. Also, as well, while the session is going on, I did open up the Q&A tab. So if you have a question and you just want to ask right away, you can type it away there, and we'll go to that as well too during the question and answer period. Also, be aware that we are recording this session for future access. So if you can't stay for the entire session, no problem. You can come back afterwards, or if you wanted to share it with others who couldn't attend, you thought this was really cool, please feel free to do so. We'll be sharing that on our LinkedIn page. So we are Lean-YEG. We're a dedicated committee of volunteers responsible for organizing the Edmonton Lean Community of Practice. We host a Lean Coffee session for the third Friday of every month from September through June. And these sessions provide a unique platform where passionate Lean practitioners and nerds like all of you can engage in insightful discussions and expand their knowledge and explore the practical applications of Lean methodologies. So today, we're going to have a really enlightening presentation. We're about to explore the connection between Japan's culture and Lean principles that have transformed industries across the globe, especially the philosophy of Kaizen, Kanban, and the legendary practices of Toyota. Today's session will take us on a journey through Japan where Lean principles like Kanban are not just business strategies, but an integral part of everyday life. Our speaker has had the unique opportunity to experience this firsthand during a 3-week exploration of the country. And he'll be sharing how Lean thinking permeates Japanese culture and the insights he gained during his travels. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce to you today's speaker, an expert in sustainable design, collaborative project delivery, and a dedicated Lean practitioner, Shafraaz Kaba.
Thanks, Abel. I'm happy to have this opportunity to chat and share with you sort of my adventure in Japan for a few weeks in the middle of May to early September. And as all of you can imagine, as people on a Lean journey, we hear lots and lots of stories, lots of anecdotes, lots of Japanese words in sort of learning Lean and also trying to practice it. And it became apparently clear to me that it's not because it was developed by Toyota, but in my proposition here, I think it's actually embedded and ingrained in their culture, deeply in the roots of Japanese culture. We see everything from the idea of Kanban to the idea of 5S to really keeping everything in an orderly, sensible, clean fashion, and it's actually remarkable how amazing it is found almost everywhere I went in the country, and how it's actually reinforced how we can still learn lots of lessons from our travels, and especially going to the Gemba, going to where we want to see things in action. So most of the talk today is going to focus on sort of the idea of Kanban, or what is sort of the Japanese word for visual signal or signboard, as I think the direct translation. And this is sort of basically what I saw almost everywhere I went, in many different forms that I think we can sort of play off of or kind of look at, but also really take cues of how to translate that to our work and even our everyday sort of going on. I started in Tokyo. We went to Matsumoto, down to the art islands of Naoshima and Toshima, then to Osaka, Nara, Kyoto, to Nagoya, and then back. over the course of 3 weeks. So it was is not enough time to see the entire country as I would have loved to, but it was a good chunk of time to really get into about all the things I was interested in, as well as I was traveling with my family, my wife and my son, who picked particular things to go to, whereas I was hoping to hit, as you can imagine, all the lean things I would have liked to do. That said, little did I know, all of the manufacturing plants were spread out through the country. So Toyota is based in Nagoya. Honda is sort of just outside of Tokyo. Mazda is actually, I believe, near Hiroshima. So I didn't quite get to actual plants themselves, but I did get to the Toyota Museum, and that was actually phenomenal how it's centered around the development of the city and the development of industry around Nagoya. But anyway, let's get started. So I did a ton of research before going, and even before going, the travel guides or the books of how to visit Japan really actually showed you how to behave. It was actually quite interesting. And again, using very simple visual signals, there's a very important, I guess, way of acknowledging temples and shrines and being respectful of their history and their culture. And it was like, okay, this is interesting. But, the opposite is also there in Japan. When we first landed, this is the very first thing we saw in the airport in Tokyo at Narita. We got off the plane, we're starving, and then we're bombarded with a ton of visual clutter and tons, as you can imagine, vending machines and shops and things, and like, okay, this is information overload. I thought this was going to be sensible and clean and understandable, but I don't know if I was way too jet lagged or way too tired or definitely too hungry, but the first impression was like, oh God, I'm going to be extremely tired if we have to deal with this for 3 weeks. But once we overcame that, got some food in us and began to explore, I began to see, oh yeah, here's the actual things I'm thinking Japan would be like. So, for example, there are signs. This was in a restroom, for example, of like, did you forget anything? Do you have everything you need? And it's like, that's very interesting. So, even reminders in weird places is interesting of how Japanese culture says, don't forget your wallet, your cell phone. I don't know why they have a flip phone in addition to a cell phone. This is your subway or travel card, an umbrella because it rains a lot, your bag, cigarettes because apparently tons of people still smoke, and your keys. So it was also interesting. As soon as we started to take public transit, it's like, here's another crazy Kanban example of how they want you to queue or line up in various shapes and forms, and even leave space for people exiting the subway car. It was like, this is way too organized and orderly, but everyone, as you can kind of see, took their spaces on cue and was very respectful of not pushing and shoving, as some views of Japan I've saw cramming onto the subway. Apparently that only happens at the very last train around midnight when they stop running. Another really crazy thing about travel in Japan is in the subway system, there was these signs, and I'm like, what the heck is this about? And they're actually this signage to tell you, if you get on a certain station, here's the best car to get on so you can get off to the closest exit or the closest stairway or the closest escalator or elevator or washroom. So it actually gives you a map of which is the best car for you to get on So when you get off, you're the quickest route out of the train car, out of the station, and off you go. It's like, that's amazing. And if you didn't see that sign, they show you on the train on these digital displays, the same sort of thing. And it's like, that's incredibly efficient and kind of funny about how, they're very, very cognizant of the, taking as few steps as possible. So being very, very thoughtful of like how to get to where you're going in the quickest, shortest possible way. So, thinking of the 8 wastes and, that, motion waste, or the, how do we actually eliminate as many steps as possible. And when you get out of the station, there's even all of these transition or strips for people who have impairment, but also just a quick symbol of where north is, because it rains a lot and it's cloudy and you come up out of a station, it's like it tells you where north is, so you can orient yourself to a map and figure out where you're going. It's like, this is ridiculously clever and smart and cognizant of, again, the people who actually need the sort of strips to guide themselves through. On the flip side of visiting Japan, there is very little order to their urban design, I found, as an architect. And so one of the weird contrary things, like, how does a city make any sense? And I was told that they don't have planners and urban designers like we do, who map out the city and create the very strict zoning regulations as we do here, but they kind of let people do what they want based on how that helps basically develop the urban form and the program and the buildings themselves. So it's not a very pretty city on first glance, but there is some incredible orderliness to other things. And there's an orderliness in how you live and how they use every tiny bit of space possible. This is where we stayed the first week in Tokyo. So 3 of us, my wife, my adult son, and I shared a very small 400 square foot flat. This is me taking a photo from the entryway. As soon as you enter the apartment, you basically are in the kitchen. So you enter right into this kitchen area. All of this circulation is double duty. The circulation is your actual workspace in the kitchen, and the door on the left here is the bathroom. And then beyond is the open space. Most traditional homes would have tatami mats and futons, and in this case, because it was an Airbnb, it had a couple of actual beds and a futon, and you could sort of see our laundry hanging on a bar in the living room, and there's a additional bar outside on the balcony beyond. And the incredible use of tiny spaces, and all you need to live is basically a 2-burner stove, a small sink, a barely half-size fridge, and that's all you get. So it's interesting to see how things are compressed, but also thoughtfully placed, so you can actually make the most use of the little you have. But then there's also weird things like, in order to get water, and the hot water especially, you have to actually turn on the water heater. And it's all set on a timer or on a programmable system where you basically turn it on in the beginning of the day, so you have hot water for a shower, and then it turns off when you don't need it. So unlike our own houses here, these things actually are only on when they're needed, and they're only put to the temperature you want. And it's like, that makes a lot of sense. And our host here put nice English words to what was necessary: the on-off button, and basically the sign that this is a water heater. And as you can imagine, the red, blue arrows are how you determine what temperature you want in Celsius. So exploring Tokyo was really interesting in that, again, the architecture goes from amazing, like this building, which is actually the visitor center we first went to kind of crazy and hodgepodge, as you can see by the buildings surrounding it. And the quality of construction, whether it's an amazing architectural landmark or a really crappy small commercial building, was absolutely phenomenal. So I imagine their construction industry takes an extreme pride in the quality of work. And as you can see, this is the detail of the ceiling joist or floor above going to a steel beam and just recessed slightly from the wood paneled wall inside this visitor center. And everything was to the millimeter precise. Like, how in the world could you get this level of quality here? And how basically it is a visitor center, so I think they did want it to be extremely clean and beautiful. But the amount of labor and effort and attention to detail, even in the concrete work, I have never seen come to this quality and sort of experience. So at the top of the visitor center, this was actually just near one of its Tokyo's main temples, Sensoji Temple. You can get a view of the entrance and the arcade and sort of walkway towards the temple. That is quite interesting. And again, unlike here, they let things butt up to all of their historic buildings without sort of context. So basically, again, all of this schlock of commercial buildings and kind of seedy motels and, basically very touristy places to eat come right up against and surround this temple in a way that's like, it makes me like, quite surprised at how they treat sort of the space they have. But when you do get to the temple and when you do get around it, there's a phenomenal sense of serenity, because you kind of forget everything around you and you focus on the thing itself. And as you might glean from some of these photos, there's not a piece of litter or a cigarette butt or anything in sight in a city that has the population of all of Canada in it. And this is because they actively have people. This is first thing in the morning when I was out walking to get breakfast, like people who come and basically sweep the sidewalks and sweep the streets of anything that was ever tossed out. But there are very few garbage cans or litter cans to be had unless you are in a major public space. You're expected to take your garbage with you. If you create garbage, you have to put it in a bag, put it in your backpack, and take it home and dispose of it, or take it back to where you bought it. Like the 7-Eleven or convenience stores where you bought things would have garbage receptacles or recycled receptacles. And the funny thing is, when they have garbage receptacles, they kind of go overboard on how they label them. I had no idea there's such things as steel cans versus aluminum cans, or different types. As you can see here, they even separate the types of plastic bottles. And this was in a large public park next to one of the old Olympic stadiums. So when they do have high capacity events, they would obviously have sort of these things. But the whole idea of cleanliness and keeping things very, very tidy is completely ingrained. And this I saw everywhere. We kind of saw people even This is someone sweeping up the leaves off of the walk to another temple. And basically, I can't imagine how you just keep the leaves off of that. And this is just, again, in a visitor center, they even 5S their trash. It's like, don't crush your cup, put it nicely in this round thing so it can, I don't know, be as compact as possible and we can capture as many disposable cups as we get. It's like, wow. So going to any place, any tourist spot, you can kind of get a sense of that whole 5S'ing of things, or that whole, at least keeping everything extremely clean is a primary characteristic of how they like to be. This is one of the doors in that temple I just showed, and the emblem of the shogun or emperor at the time is sort of how they represented who created that particular landmark. So this sort of butterfly-like emblem is one of the ideas, and then that is expressed almost in all of the detail of the building, and repeated everywhere. And it's really quite phenomenal, the graphic quality of even historic buildings and how they are represented. Traveling and walking around, again, you're hit by a whole bunch of visual signals, including which direction to go down and upstairs, which is kind of shockingly bizarre. Apparently, Tokyo, you have to go up the left side of the stairs when you go up, and you go down the left side, and that's kind of opposite to how we do it, or if we ever do it in a sort of orderly way. But as you can imagine, sometimes with the ton of people throughout the city, they try to create a lot of different things to tell people where to go, which direction to go, or where not to go. In this case, on these train tracks, that we're telling people not to go off the beaten path, so to speak, with this spiky yellow things. So can't imagine why they stopped the yellow spikes, so it's easy to get around, but it is a definite visual warning. And like I said, they have these yellow strips to aid people with visual impairment everywhere. Like every sidewalk down the city streets, every subway station, anywhere publicly accessible you go, someone has made it a policy to create transition strips. So you have, again, this ingrained sense of, hey, we need to create these visual signals to travel and to have impairment. And like you see it here, and this is a picture I want to show because it's shockingly void of any people, which is surprising, but it's amazing where you see all of these particular things and how they're done uniquely in Japan, including bike lanes, and being aware and cautious of, hey, you're stepping into a bike lane, so or don't drive in this bike lane. And as a bike commuter, I'm very grateful they had some pretty amazing bike lanes. As a motorcyclist, I was shocked that they don't use motorcycles that much. Like, there are very, very few motorcycles in all of the places we've gone to, and I'm like, how does that work? But it's remarkable when you are able to visit. This is the Matsumoto temple, or basically castle, rather. This is a landmark my son wanted to visit, and my wife wanted to go to Matsumoto to see the birthplace of one of her favorite artists, Yayoi Kusama. So just needed to throw some eye candy in there to just change it up a bit. But I think part of Japanese culture, and their visual culture in particular, is based on how they create these very serene, very elegant structures and elegant places, and how they build them and craft them speaks to how they then follow through with their own culture and how they act around them. So again, back to signs and clarification, they remind you how to act and how to purify yourself as you visit temples, and for especially foreigners like myself, they make sure we do it correctly. And it's remarkable how prevalent all of this is throughout the city and throughout how it permeates. And in the interesting thing of, I guess, Japanese buildings is there's so much new that there's so very little old historic structures. But when they are in amongst the newness, they again get lost in how close in proximity they are to everything that is new. And I believe that's because they deal with lots of natural catastrophes, earthquakes, tsunamis, that kind of level everything once in a while completely and have to rebuild again. So the things that they do have, they, as historic buildings, they take extremely good care of and protect them, because many of them in the past, because they were made of very light wood, have either burned down or have collapsed or have been destroyed in the multiple wars that have happened in the last little while. So I was quite shocked at how sometimes they disregard some of their recent history. Like, for example, the Capsule Hotel that I studied in architecture school as a modern seminal building has been torn down. It's like, how do you not recognize certain things that are important in architectural, I guess, history? That said, coming back to construction, they have that kind of dialed in and figured out. This is the entrance to a construction site, and these numbers are the noise levels that the site has been creating. So to give people a sense that they are limited in how much noise they're allowed to make at day and night, this basically tells any passerby what the maximum noise has been, so they can, complain if it's gone over a certain threshold or basically is acceptable. And as you can imagine, and what I don't have is a lot of shots of actual construction sites because they hoard them fairly well. And what I was able to glean is like they keep it relatively orderly, as you can imagine. Some other building details. This is the actual fire pull station they use in buildings. So unlike ours, which is a manual kind of pull down a handle, they have these electronic buttons that are glowing red and are very visible, as well as an annunciator right on the panel. And it was like everywhere you go, you could easily see the red glowing button is about almost 10 centimeters in diameter, so it's fairly large, and it's easily seen at the exits of most buildings. And as you can imagine, I found all architectural kind of curiosities funny and interesting, especially this running man symbol embedded in the floor, because apparently there wasn't any good ceiling space in an art gallery to put the running man symbols to show where the nearest exit was. In a sense, when I thought about it, it's like, actually the floor is probably best, because if the ceiling is full of smoke, you're going to see it better on the floor anyway. So and as you can see here, some really exquisite construction details and ability to execute to a fine level of detail. And this extends to even transportation and how they think of it differently, and how we, I think, in North America always supersize things. A city, again, as big as Tokyo, uses small vehicles for everything related to public services. So big ladder trucks on top of a relatively small truck. As you can see, there's a van next to it. It's like they service all of these multiple 60-story buildings out of these small little fire trucks and ambulances, including their garbage trucks. Like they're like miniature in comparison to what you use. And I imagine they go with the theory that multiple or many of these is better than having a couple of or sort of bigger ones. So all of Tokyo, a city of 40 million people, is serviced by these miniature little garbage trucks, and the sensible people drive small-ish cars, as that's the best way to be efficient and get around, and which again is curious that there isn't a lot of motorcycles, because I would have thought that would have been the best way to get around traffic in Tokyo. The curious thing also in Japan, which is maybe a tribute to their industry, is they have very few electric cars. So seeing this electric bus was interesting, but they have tons of hybrids, but their car industry is still very much keen on gasoline. And as you probably know by checking out Honda or Toyota or Nissan, they don't have a ton of electric options out yet. And they're kind of laggards, I guess, in adopting an all-electric kind of transportation strategy. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in the next decade, I think. And furthermore, I guess transportation, we took a lot of trains, as you can imagine. The train on the right is what we took to Matsumoto from Tokyo, and it was one of the most comfortable, quiet, efficient, and fun trains I've been on. It was not a high-speed Shinkansen, which we also took, but it had all of the amenities, seats that swivel so you could face people when you're a group of four, and enough power outlets and charging devices, which was really curious when we went on the Shinkansen, which had no power outlets nor USB chargers. But I suppose they go by the idea that you're on the train for a shorter period of time and shouldn't need to charge things. And the Shinkansen, the bullet trains, are ridiculously on time to the second and ridiculously efficient in that you have everyone get on and off on a station in under a minute. And for this train having about 10 different cars to do that is absolutely remarkable. But it comes back to how people have to queue to get on the right train car in the right order and in the right way, with giving space for people to exit. And it's just an ingrained part of culture. And I found it really curious that they extend this to even school kids, and how they basically make them all wear yellow hats to keep them all visibly in view, and no one's straying off unless you take off your hat and make a run for it. But that has been sort of a cute thing we saw in anything and everything we went to do. And I can't not say anything about Japanese toilets. So as you probably may have seen or heard through other things, they've definitely figured out the best way to utilize washroom space as well as toilets themselves, and made them extremely clean and efficient and remarkably comfortable. So when we first got there, it was like, oh my gosh, what are all these buttons, and I just need the flush. So we finally over the course of 3 weeks, actually enjoyed trying the different buttons and getting very comfortable with Japanese toilets, and recognizing how amazing and effective they can be. Although, as a sustainability person, I wonder at how much power and water consumption it takes to have things basically on all the time, or providing additional resources to do all of these things. In some places, we saw toilets that had built-in sinks on top, but it didn't. They would also have a sink outside the stall, and I'm going, is that because they don't want to use the sink on top? And I thought that was actually a cool idea, is to use the water, the hand wash water for toilet flushing, as a super efficient way to do things. But cleanliness and germs and phobias and all the things I imagine play into that. So as you can kind of see, I'm trying to explain how Kanban is both elegant but also overwhelming. And once you're there, you get this amazing sense of visual culture. And I think that's why they need to create visual signals that are super clean and clear and apparent, is so that when you're bombarded with all of this visual clutter around you, you can focus on what's important. And my wife, who's an artist, took me to a lot of stationery shops. I was shocked and awed and almost super interested in buying this day timer that is, again, a PDCA focused day timer. And like, how in the world they extend PDCA to how they work every day? They didn't have a 2025 book. Otherwise, I would have totally bought it. Since it was halfway through the year, I'm not sure I could have been using it effectively. But this is the stationery store we went to. And again, the quality of detail, construction, and design was exquisite. And basically, how things are laid out, how things are put in the right place, in the right scale, in the right sort of fashion was phenomenal. So this is in Kyoto. It's a Kokudoyo store. It's probably one of the most beautiful stores I've ever been to in my life. And it sells all sorts of greeting cards to calligraphy to paper. And in the back, there's actually a sort of almost like a meditation room where people are, where it's part of a ceremony of writing calligraphy. And it's like, it was shockingly, I guess, awe-inspiring and humbling to sort of be in that kind of space. So, cognizant of time and wanting to leave time for questions, happy to hear what you want to know about and how I can maybe pull out some other photos to share. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Shafraaz. My key takeaway, one, super jealous that you got to go to Japan, and also as well too, that you're able to create such great photos that weren't blurry. All my photos when I go someplace are always kind of shaky or they're blurry or whatnot. But I liked how different Kanban signals were embedded in the environment, and they gave you information to decide or influence you towards a desired action or result in an environment where you're just overstimulated by they're able to pop it out in the moment that you need it. And it just made me think about how can we do that at work, right? Where competition is very stiff for our attention when we're at work, and how can we embed those same type of signals for us to make decisions so we can maintain flow in our processes? And if they could do that out in the wild, surely we should be able to do that in our offices where we have a little bit more control and influence over things.
Totally. I think first thing to do is turn off notifications and all the sounds and distractions. Like that's part of my ongoing struggle is like no notifications off, please. Sarah has a question.
Well, I'll get to that. Before we get to questions and answers, again, feel free to use the raise hand feature or type them into the chat or use the Q&A tab. I'll be moderating to that. But also, we encourage you to stay connected, continue the conversations that are sparked today, and explore opportunities for collaboration by joining our LinkedIn page and visiting the YouTube channel, where we will be showing a recording of this session as well too, and there's recordings for other sessions that we've made in the past. So please feel free to visit them. Okay, so it's time for us to transition into the Q&A period. Again, feel free to post questions in the chat. Utilize the raise hand feature. Don't forget to unmute yourself when we're called upon you. Okay. First question is Sarah.
Hi, Shafraaz. You killed it. Like, killed it. That was so rad. It was like experiencing a travel blog, but lean travel blog. Like, so cool. And like to echo Aval, so jealous that you got to go. Like, Japan is so freaking cool. Just wanted to share a couple of takeaways that I jotted down from this fantastic presentation. Number one was reliability creating efficiency. I thought was like goosebump. Yes, like thinking about how to make that work in construction and in work environment. So cool. Like when you were explaining the trains and how like they're legitimately to the second, and so people know and they're able to load on and load off within a minute. It's because it's reliable, right? So I love that.
Not only that, it tells you which car is the best car to get off of for station.
Like,
it's
beautiful. The second big takeaway I had was the Hijunka you were talking about, like the little tiny vehicles, but a lot of them for services. I think that's something that's so transferable to construction, where we tend to, like in North America, bulk up and do everything huge, and that's not continuous flow, right? Where if we did a lot of little loads, it would make life a lot better, easier. Yeah. Anyway, I love that. And last thing I wanted to say with the question was the Kanbans. I mean, come on, that's freaking amazing. But so question, did it feel pedantic? Like, did you feel like you were kind of dumb? Like I always wonder about that. Like, with
is that like just in Japan, or is that like a question for like all the time?
In general.
Okay. Yes.
I always feel like when there's too many signs or too many explanations for stuff, it's like, I'm not a kindergartner. You know what I mean? Like,
I actually found them just right. Like they weren't everywhere, but they were in the key places where especially foreigners would hit them, right?
Yeah.
So basically at the airport or at the main train station or the main subway station, and they were explicitly English, right? Or visual. So, hello Tokyo. That these are the rules you need to follow. You're going to not, throw trash anywhere. You're going to take it with, like, it was just enough. And again, traveling with my wife and my son, they didn't mention it, or they didn't feel pedantic or like, hey, why are they bombarding us or hitting us over the head all the time? It was. And even in the, as you go to a temple, the little sign to say, hey, here's how you purify yourself to walk in. It's like, it's small and at the right place.
You're more grateful for it than I'm a dumb tourist.
Yeah, I think it wasn't a big monster glaring sign in neon at you. They were actually scaled to be effective, and it was like, someone's put a lot of thought into that.
Yeah, cool. Anyway, thank you. That's all I had.
I really like how, in going to Japan, it's a real masterclass in regards to seeing how this stuff is embedded in the work, and out in the wild, so to speak, in the public. And I know that when we go there, like when we have Kanban signals, you don't want to have to look for your Kanban signals. You want it to be where you need it at the time that you need it in the place that you need it, right? And how can you incorporate that within it? And so they're showing us how to do that at a very masterclass level out in the public in the wild. Again, it just makes me go like, we're just trying to put simple stuff on the construction site, or put it in our office or on our desktop. Like, geez, like, we got to be able to do this.
Totally.
So it really sparks the imagination and the creativity of how we can do that. So any other questions or comments does people have to make? Again, please use the raise hand feature. I do have one question though before we get to the next. Is that was everything is in Japan? So a lot of stuff was they used pictures, or was it more words? So there's not a lot of language, right?
It was very much pictorial. So lots of definite, just as much graphic as possible. Like I showed, some of the buttons on certain toilets or water heaters were all in Japanese, but there were thank goodness for Google Translate on your phone now. You can actually hold up your phone to something and hit translate, and it was actually helpful. Sometimes hilarious because the translation would be totally incorrect, but really neat to see how most of it was like, as we like to do in Kanban, is to make it completely instant in recognition and understanding.
Yeah, so you're able to get by without having to know Japanese, and you're still able to effectively, go through those signals and act on them.
Yeah. And a lot of it is in the human interaction, which obviously I can really show slides of. A lot of it is gesture and body language. So when you are on a train or on you're trying to get to somewhere, you're nodding your head, or you're nudging, or you're slightly bowing to give way, or offer up your seat. Like, it was super interesting to see how respectful, again, they are as society to elders or to people who need additional assistance, and how just remarkable. There's just a beautiful way of respect of everything, of materials, of people, of moving, of and I could do a whole other presentation on food. The going to eat and seeing how food is presented or how things are laid out is like, oh my gosh, so good. I wish I was born Japanese, actually. I'm in the wrong culture for this, especially on a lean journey.
Nice. Again, we're coming to the end here, and it doesn't seem there's any more comments, so we can wrap up early and gift you guys back 9 minutes. So again, Shafraaz, thank you for sharing with us today. And us at Lean-YEG, we'd like to express our gratitude to everyone in attendance today for being a part of this really cool, thriving lean community here in Edmonton. And I urge you, go to our LinkedIn page and sign up, because there's going to be a lot of stuff kicking off for this the awesome 24-25 season, not only with presentations that we have lined up, but some really cool tours as well too. So it's not just going to be on the online. Again, thank you to everyone, and I hope you all have a fantastic day. Enjoy the last few days of this nice warm weather before it snows. Winter is coming.
Awesome. Thank you all. See you at the next
one. Bye,
one.
everybody.